for me, it was like, if I leave banking, I'm never going to be able to come back. That was my, how I was thinking about it. But now, like, 5 years later, I'm like, I don't want to go back into it.
Emilie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me.
So you have had such a relatable journey for our listeners, and I'm really looking forward to diving into not just the building of your personal brand and Vestpod, but also the journey or the steps before that. So leaving a corporate career in finance to build your own business. It's so important, I think, for our audience that we reflect on that, because there'll be a portion of listeners who are maybe still stuck in or, moving through that transition away from working for somebody else, working in a 9-to-5. So to kind of set the tone for the rest of our conversation, why don't you take us back to some of your corporate career and how you got into finance, and then we can kind of unpack how you got out of it as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so it's a long career in finance. I actually studied finance, economics, management in business school. So I went to a business school in France and decided to also study abroad. So I studied in Spain, in the UK. And very early on, I got a job, like summer internships, and then internships in banking. And I worked for a big bank, about it, called Lehman Brothers. So that was my first job. I joined Lehman as an intern in 2006, and I was back there in 2007. So really, super challenging, super competitive to get in. These were like the super cool graduate programs post-crisis. Paid a lot of money, for as a first job. So I moved to London to actually start working for Lehman, and I signed my job like a year before finishing my studies. So that was pretty cool. And but working in finance wasn't a dream. My mom is a photographer. My dad is an architect. I was really good in math, science, but why finance? Why not something else? But I thought, okay, if I move to London, I need to pay my bills. So yeah, it can be fun. And it was also, in my business school and studying management, this is like the top job. This is the grail you can get, was working in banking. I don't think this is the case today. I think today is more, MBAs tend to go to, build their own businesses. But at the time, it was really like the high finance. So that was for a year. And I was working in their private equity team. So my job, we had like a fund, a $3 billion fund at the time. And I was one of the investment analysts there. So looking at different businesses, producing memo. And then when we decided we're going to buy a business, keeping this business for 5 years, working with the management team. So, not necessarily sitting on boards of directors, but, being there all the time with like top management. So yeah, like amazing exposure.
What your ambitions were at the start of your career and what success looked like for you at that point.
Yeah, I think starting working in banking, it's not necessarily how you define success, because I feel I was really young. I was a bit thrown into this, like finance arena. I didn't know where to go. And you look at senior management and you think really highly of them, like you really respect what they've done. They've worked for 30 years in banking. So success, how people define it around you, I think it's around, being promoted, having the bigger office, having the more money, the bigger house, the more, cars. So I think that's, you sort of play this game of, wanting more money. The goal is, of course, is to, work with amazing businesses and really do your job really well. But it's also to get paid at the end of the year, get your bonus, get a salary increase, be promoted from, analyst to associate, and start going up the ladder, because the higher you are, the more decisions you can make. I still think this is really amazing. But I now think that you can do it a different way, because I've spent quite a bit of time in banking. And when I see, the gender pay gap, that I see so few women working in finance, and also the rhythm and the mentality, it wasn't really myself. So I had to sort of change a bit of a part of myself to really fit within this industry, not really on work wise, but how you look. You have to wear your suit every day. You have to wear heels. You have to, really present really well. You can be yourself, but I think when you're really junior, you really have to fit in.
So tell us a little bit about then the decision to leave all of that, because it's so important that we don't underplay this. There'll be a lot of people listening who have either been through this journey or are at the same stage where, being in a secure, in inverted commas, high paying corporate job with maybe a mortgage or, responsibilities, there's an intensity about that even though maybe you have that little inner voice saying, this is not providing me with that fulfillment, that sort of inner mission, as you mentioned there. So I'd love to hear your experience around that and what that point in your journey looked like, maybe some of the fear, some of the challenges, and when you ultimately made the decision to start your own business.
Yeah. So leaving a big, corporate careers where you get, your monthly salary, you get sometimes a bonus at the end of the year, you have this safety, you have this security, and that means you also have savings, you have money aside. So you think, there's a big part of you who thinks, okay, I could just stay there and do my job, and if I don't really enjoy it 100%, maybe that's okay, because that's what most people actually do. Like, they have a corporate job and it's fun and it pays the bill. And that means I can go on holiday with my family. I can live in a nice house. So, why not? I think it's really hard to actually leave this type of careers and any careers, and especially banking, that tend to pay a bit better than other industries. So it took me a bit of time to make my own mind, but I had savings. So I thought, why don't I try? But for me, it was like, if I leave banking, I'm never going to be able to come back. That was my, how I was thinking about it. But now, 5 years later, I'm like, I don't want to go back into it. So, there's I think it's a big, massive mindset change. For me, leaving banking was a bit like a failure. So, I didn't made it to what was initially success for me, being on the top rank of banking. And I live in the middle of the journey to do what? And to build a business. We all have, lots of business idea, but finding the one thing that, will make me work on, and motivate me for the next 10 years. I think that was really hard.
So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how the idea for Vestpod came along.
So I launched Vestpod about 4 years ago, and that was post my failing my first business. So on the personal level, that was a time when it was actually really hard. Because I left banking to set up a first business. We raised money. We had to close the business after a year and a half. And I ended up back at home. I don't want to work in finance. And I'm a bit skeptical about entrepreneurship, right? I mean, you've just failed your first business. You've lost everything. After being the girl who left banking and raised money for a business, and it's all super sexy. No, it was really hard. And I got pregnant with my first child, actually. So I was at home and I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of options now. I can't go back to finance. So why don't I dig into this topic of, personal finance and financial literacy? I actually, during this time, I booked a meeting with a financial advisor in the city, and I was still working in banking. So I was wearing my suit with my BlackBerry, coming to this meeting. And this advisor looks at me and he's like, "Where is your husband?" And I was like, "Oh, this is crazy." So I started looking and researching how to invest my money, how to get started. What are the investment products? So in the UK, you have pensions, you have ISA, individual savings accounts, stocks and share ISA, etc. It's a lot of jargon. It can be complicated to access, and nothing was really made for women, just because the industry has been built by men. For men, it's just a case. Historically, but then it was also hard to find financial advisors who are actually women. There's very few of them. So we started as a weekly newsletter, sending it to my friends. And that's really how it got started, without any goals. The only goal, and the big goal, was to empower 1 million women. That was the one goal, but I had no clue how to do it, where, just doing a lot of research. And actually doing research is great, but it sort of took me so much time to get my first product out. If, the newsletter is the first product for Vestpod, but, for how long can you research an industry? At some point, you just have to get started. So, if you're thinking about doing something, document it, blog about it, create a social account, create a newsletter. It costs you nothing. It's zero. It's just your name on it. But I think it's important to start building something and documenting your journey, and you'll feel much better about it, because if you're just taking notes and without producing anything, you feel you're wasting your time, I believe.
Yeah, it's a really similar journey from to mine, Emilie. You know, when I started my business, I was looking for my big business idea, and so I started writing about the wellness industry in the same way that you've described. I launched a blog. It was not pretty. It was, you know, with a logo I created in Microsoft Paint, and just started sending out this newsletter. But it gives you so much clarity when you just start publishing ideas and refining the idea. And then for me, I realized that suddenly I had actually created something and that it could become a business. And I imagine it was similar for you. So what would you say is the one thing that you wish you'd known when you first started your business journey?
To understand that it's not all about the destination, but it's about enjoying the journey, the day-to-day.
What's a practical thing that maybe you wish you'd done sooner in the business?
I think understanding the value of social media, especially Instagram, that I believe today you can build a business.
Why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I want women to be, all women, if I can, but a lot more women to be financially secure, to be financially independent, and not rely on anyone.
I love that. What's the best part about your job?
Flexibility, seeing my kids.
And what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given for your business?
You don't actually fail, but you learn.
Thank you so much, Emilie, for the work that you do, for the women that you inspire and empower, and for taking the time to share the journey of building Vestpod with us today.
Thank you very much, Lauren, for having me.